Hello and welcome to my channel Bobo Bun. I'm Lisa. I'm a vintage inspired dressmaker and dressmaking teacher, utterly passionate about all things sewing and knitting, filling in through the gaps because I love to be busy with my hands. In today's chat I want to talk to you about some fabulous fashion history, designer-led dramas that have been on our screens, that are coming to our screens, are currently on our screens, linked up with exhibitions that marry with them, and two of which I have been to. And the designers I want to look at are Dior, Schiaparelli, Chanel and Balenciaga. Now when I saw the front page of this Radio Times, I was very excited. I mean, look at the beautiful Dior drawing. It says new look. I knew this drama was coming to our screens very soon. It's going to be on Valentine's Day, the 14th of February. I was going to say the 14th of December then for some bizarre reason. 14th of February. To me, that's enough love. My love of fashion history and the past. Now I did a chat on my Patreon. It's called Bobo Bun's Break Time News. They're my culture chats that I do at Bobo Bun's Sewing Club, and it was focusing on various things around the new look, the impact that Dior's new look had on fashion in America and England just after the war. And it was called the New London look in England. The shock that the huge long skirts with so much fabric, the corsets taking women's look back, the reception of the new look. I absolutely loved bringing this chat to my patrons, and I also focused on what was happening in France during the occupation, when the Germans, the Nazis had occupied France, and how haute couture still existed at some level, the stands that various designers took against that. And I believe that the new look drama that will be on is going to chart that. So it will be looking at Chanel, whether she was a collaborator or not, her relationship with a German high-ranking official. I know that her perfume company was owned by two Jewish brothers who had gone to America because of obviously what was happening at the time. So I don't know if the drama will look at whether Chanel was anti-Semitic or not. It's fabulously played by Juliette Binoche from the trailers I've seen. She looks quite like a more attractive version of Coco Chanel, and she's an amazing actress. We've got Dior in there. I believe that Lucien Lelong, who had employed Dior during the war, where he learnt a lot of his trade in the drama. I think Balenciaga and Pierre Balmain are also in the drama, so it will focus on a few of those and how they continue to design and create fashion during the war, separate from the rest of the world. The rest of the world didn't know what was going on within this occupied country. And then you've obviously got the reception of the new look, and Glenn Close plays Carmel Snow, the American journalist who was the one who proclaimed it the new look. The Disney Channel is a Balenciaga drama. Now Balenciaga's never been a designer that I'm drawn to. He's held up as one of the greats, but I like some of his early designs, but I can see the cleverness in there. I can see the skill, the artistry, but it's just not work, and design that I feel drawn to. However, he, of all of them, was the most skilled in his field. I mean, I'll be looking at that in a moment. I haven't watched it yet on Disney. My only problem, I have got access to the Disney Channel through a friend, and I must say before I move on, New Look is on Apple TV, so you're going to have to subscribe to that, and I think I will for the month, so I could just watch as much as I can of it, and we shall go for that. I don't want to miss this drama. Balenciaga, as I say, is on Disney Channel, and then in the past I have watched on Netflix, these are all ones I just subscribed to so I can watch these things. On Netflix was Transatlantic, and absolutely loved this drama. Germans have got down to Marseille, even though southern France was Vichy controlled. the impact isn't being felt so greatly, and so many Jewish artists, intellectuals and intellectual thinkers who would be seen as a threat to the Nazis were trying to get out of France to freedom. And that drama focuses on Marigold and Varian Fry, who set up an emergency relief committee. I believe it's the American Emergency Relief Committee. So it focuses on them and all these amazing artists. You know, we have got Peggy Guggenheim in there, Max Ernst, Marc Chagall and his wife, various artists, a lot of surreal artists, philosophers, thinkers, writers, as I said. And it's a veritable feast for fashion history. Actually, going back to the Balenciaga, I was just going to say, I forgot about that. One of the things I'm thinking about watching it is because it's all with subtitles, because it's in Spanish and French. So then I think, oh, it's going to be so tricky because you're going to be reading the subtitles but wanting to look at the clothes. So you'll look at the clothes not understanding what the dialogue is. And I know I'd rather be looking at the clothes. So it's going to be a twofold watch, you know, one to like listen to the dialogue and then go back to actually look at the clothes and the costumes. So I think that might be quite a lengthy watch. Anyway, back to Transatlantic. I was in heaven watching this, and Marigold was an American heiress who was very partial to Schiaparelli and wore quite a bit of it. So her character in Transatlantic, which I forgot to say is from a novel, it's adapted from the novel by Julie Oringer. It's a 2019 book, so you can buy that to read as well. The costume designer for Transatlantic was Justine Seymour, and she was a British costume designer, and she bought a lot of original vintage which she then adapted to fit the actress who played Marigold. And then we've got all the little Schiaparelli nods with the jacket with the red lips on. We've got the shoe hat at the party, Peggy Guggenheim wearing forks. We've got so much to look at. I believe when she wears the hat at the party, her dress is made of gloves. It's black and white dress with gloves. So it has all the surrealist, dreamlike influences in the costumes, and the clothes are so important. They reveal and say about characters. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend. I'll just put up a few images for you to see of Transatlantic. But I really loved seeing the references to Schiaparelli. There hasn't been a drama that I'm aware of focus on Schiaparelli. There really should, I think. Oh, wouldn't that be amazing with all of the people that she worked with and knew. I did go and see the Schiaparelli exhibition, which I put a film about on here at the time. I went last January to see it in Paris. I just knew I didn't want to miss that. And for Dior, I went to the V&A in 2019, yeah, it would be 2019, to see that marvellous exhibition. They're two that I just knew I did not want to miss. They are one of my both of them are my favourite designers. Chanel is at the V&A at the moment, will be finishing soon, and I still don't know if I'm actually going to be able to get there to see that. She's not one of my favourite designers. Her latter work with all the Harris tweed suits is just not my thing. I can see the beauty in it, but it's just not my style at all. But I would love to see all her early work, the stitchery, the embellishment, and the journey. And she's part of the Hall of Fashion Greats, isn't she? Part of fashion. No, I'm continually inspired by what I make, by what I see in period dramas, recreations, by the films that I watch, by looking through photographs of what these designers made. And on my lap here I've got 3 amazing books. Oh, they're very, very heavy. From the Dior, the Schiaparelli exhibition, and the Kyoto Museum of Fashion that's got some amazing Balenciaga in. So I will show you those images in a bit. I'm going to take these off my lap. Gosh, they are so heavy. It's like having a pile of bricks on my lap. Now, Chanel, I don't know how much you know about Chanel, but she was known for, what would you call her? Her acerbic tongue. She had a lot to say about other people. She did say some disparaging things about Balenciaga. Interesting, I found this quote where she really celebrates his ability. She said, "Balenciaga alone is a couturier in the truest sense of the word. Only he is capable of cutting material, assembling a creation and sewing it by hand. The others are simply fashion designers." So she's put him up there on that pedestal. Really, truly high accolade from Chanel. And Dior said of Balenciaga, "Haute couture is like an orchestra whose conductor is Balenciaga. We other couturiers are the musicians and we follow the direction he gives." So they both revered the man and they saw his artistry. Dior knew how to drape fabric, he understood that, but he designed fashion and he adored women. He wanted to recreate beautiful clothes that they could feel their most fabulous selves in, and then he relied on his staff to turn these designs into reality, to pattern cut, to assemble them, you know, and he would obviously pick the cloth and whatever, and he would pick the cloth and the embellishments. Chanel, she'd learnt to sew as a young girl when she was in an orphanage, you know, with the nuns. So she'd learnt to sew, and later she had a millinery shop. She learnt to be a milliner, and then she had a milliner's. So she actually knew how to sew, but she wouldn't have been a pattern cutter. She understood form and shape and the design that she wanted. Balenciaga, unlike both of those, was a true artisan. His mother was a seamstress. His father was a fisherman. His father died when Balenciaga was quite young. And he was born in the Basque region of Spain in 1895. At the age of 12, he got an apprenticeship at a tailor's in San Sebastian, which was a fashionable resort near them. So he really started to learn his trade. He learnt how to sew, to cut cloth, to draft patterns, to pattern cut, how to drape cloth. You know, that was the start of his education. He could do it all. And in 1917, he established his first fashion house, and it was called Elsa. It's a shortened version of his mother's maiden name. And then later he opened stores in Barcelona and Madrid. But he moved to Paris in 1937 as a result of the Spanish Civil War, and he arrived in grand style because he established his house on George V. So he quickly became the most exclusive couturier. And his early training, it just set him apart from everyone else. Unlike Dior and Chanel, he didn't start with a sketch. He always started with a fabric, you know, thinking what the fabric needed to become, draping the fabric on the stand. Yeah, his understanding of cloth was second to none, you know, in the way that cloth behaves. When we look at Schiaparelli, she didn't sew. She just put her ideas together. She was more of an artist. She understood fashion. She knew what she loved to wear. She came from a very wealthy Roman family. We've got Chanel, who was placed in an orphanage. Dior came from a wealthy family who had lost their wealth. Balenciaga came from a similar sort of background to Chanel. So they all have very different backgrounds. Schiaparelli, like I say, came from a wealthy family of intellectuals, writers. One of her uncles was an astrologer, hence the astrological embroidery that comes through some of her work. You know, there's a later collection. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head because I'm trying to remember lots to tell you. Schiaparelli became friends with so many of the known artists of the day. Salvador Dali was a close friend of hers, and she translated her love of surreal art into the clothes that she designed and made, you know, and had made. I think she's probably one of my favourites for the witty, the fun, the joy of being a woman in all of her designs. I was speechless when I went to see the exhibition and just to be able to take it all in, and there was room to actually look. There wasn't just crowds of people. I could look and examine all of the beautiful clothes, and obviously I'm bringing up ones that I'm not necessarily telling you what they are, I'm just popping them up just to illustrate as I'm talking. Now, Chanel loathed Schiaparelli. I don't know if it was her loathing of Schiaparelli first that caused Schiaparelli to also loathe her. They had an ongoing feud. Chanel said of Schiaparelli, the Italian artist who makes clothes. She didn't even attribute her name. That's how much disdain she showed to Schiaparelli. I mean, they were both of the two most prominent designers between the wars, so, you know, the feud's understandable. And they were designing very different clothes. Chanel for her loose, comfortable clothes to free women, and Schiaparelli in her clothes that celebrated the female form. Schiaparelli called Chanel that hat maker, as Chanel had started off as a milliner, so it's just her retort back, again not attributing Chanel her name. There is a story that there was a party they went to, and I think it was fancy dress, and Chanel sort of moved Schiaparelli towards where there were loads of candles, and then her dress caught fire and she probably would have had her drinks thrown over to put her out. I don't know whether that's true or not, but obviously these kind of stories go down in the annals of people enjoying the awful things they all did to each other. Chanel, in true style, she had nothing good to say about Dior either, and I read that at 71, Dior's new look was the reason she came out of retirement to relaunch a collection in contrast, you know, opposed to what he was doing, because she loathed how he was putting women back in corsets, padding out their hips, restraining them once more. And what she said about him was, in many things that she had to say, that this is just one, look how ridiculous these women are, wearing clothes by a man who doesn't know women, never had one, and dreams of being one. I mean, it's unbelievably rude, and she's alluding to his homosexuality, which obviously was illegal at the time. And she says he dreams of being a woman and he doesn't know them. Women were so important in Dior's life. His mother to his sister, who was captured and sent to a concentration camp for working as resistance, for working, you know, for being part of the French resistance. She returned back, and Dior looked after her his whole life. He named Miss Dior, his perfume, after her, and she spent her whole life growing roses and working on the perfumes. That was the rest of her life. His directrice, sorry, I can't remember the exact names of these people, but his directrice, his head seamstress, his pattern cutter, these are all women that he greatly admired, and he greatly admired women. He wanted to actually enable them to celebrate their best selves. I know it's been seen as, you know, taking them back to the past when they were chained and less free, but yeah, I see a man that celebrates womanhood, and Chanel are just sort of, I like how strong she is, how she lived life as a very independent woman. She had lots of affairs. She used the men in her affairs, never marrying them, and they were generally married, and their money financed her businesses. She was a woman who had her eye on the end goal, knew where she wanted to get to. You know, and you've got to admire that strength, because obviously it was a different time to now, but I think she could have done with a bit more warmth than she actually had. Dior shows his absolute warmth. He was ever the gentleman, and he wrote in his memoir in regard to Chanel that Chanel's personality, as well as her taste, had style and elegant authority. He never said anything bad about her, you know, and I think you get remembered far better for being honourable and kind and generous of spirit. Now, outside of all of these designers, we've got Balenciaga. He didn't like to court publicity. He very rarely spoke to the press. He was very much a private man. Spanish heritage influenced many of his designs, with boleros that are embroidered and very much look like matador jackets. The black lace that's from the mantilla shawls worn by the women, the Spanish women, flamenco style dresses, infanta dresses from the late 30s, wide hip dresses, very much influenced by Velázquez's paintings. And Balenciaga's view of women was that he said, a woman has no need to be perfect or even beautiful to wear my dresses. The dress will do all that for her. So he's saying that, you know, anyone can wear my clothes. It's empowering, and every woman will look fabulous and beautiful in them, even though some were quite extraordinary. There was the envelope dress, and I think only 2 were sold and 1 was returned because, as I read, the lady who bought it couldn't work out how to undo it to go to the toilet, so not hugely practical. Obviously, as some of his later designs, you know, were quite extraordinary. In the 1950s, Balenciaga pioneered new shapes. He brought out balloon-hemmed skirts, of which I made a puffball skirt when they returned back in the 80s. Jackets that were fitted at the front and voluminous at the back. 1957, he brought out his sack dress, which eliminated the waist. It was just a straight up-down design, which is a very early forerunner of the 1960s shift dress. So he was very much ahead of his time. It was really loathed at the time, but obviously it became quite an iconic shape. As I said, the 60s mini dresses and the shift dresses opposed to Dior's nipped-in waists, and very much what Yves Saint Laurent started to do with his trapeze dresses when he took over the House of Dior after Dior's death. Balenciaga also designed the baby doll dress in the late 1950s, which I think is rather ghastly. It's an early version of the buffet dresses that you see today, which are a bit more pared down. They're not as wide, but you can see where that shapeless design has come from. They're just not my bag, as I have discussed before. I much prefer fitted, form-fitting clothes, and hence that's why I love Schiaparelli and Dior far more than the other designers. Now, Balenciaga, he closed his house in 1968 and he died 4 years later. But Cecil Beaton, the British Society photographer, he collected many of Balenciaga's work. He called on society friends who would have Balenciaga clothes, and he brought together an amazing collection. It was a 1972 exhibition that was at the V&A, and it was known as Fashion, an Anthology by Cecil Beaton, which I think would have been rather amazing to have also seen. So that's one exhibition that I definitely won't get to see unless I can time travel back to 1972. In my head, I have my memories of Schiaparelli in what would last year have been, goodness me with years, 2023, January 23, and I had Dior in 2019, and who knows, I may get to see Chanel in 24. If you, like me, adore fashion history and the past and looking for inspiration for what you want to make, then I wonder if you'll be joining me and watching New Look Begins on Valentine's Day. I can't wait. I may be showing this film to you after the event, so there'll be some feedback on what everybody thinks, but I just wanted to make a film for you talking about something I'm really excited about. And you can see behind me a black coat which I'm working on. I've sort of filmed part of it for my patrons, so in my next video I'm going to be looking at black and shocking pink, Elsa Schiaparelli shocking pink, and where I'm going with my makes at the moment, so can't wait to be showing you all of that next time as well. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe, don't forget that, then you'll get notifications when I'm next up. Please leave a comment, because I love having a chat with you about what you think about my content, something we've discussed, or any ideas you may have, and share and let people know I'm here. So until next time, it's been lovely chatting to you. Enjoy watching if you do, or if you've been to any of the exhibitions, I'd love to hear, and I shall see you again very soon. Bye bye for now.